Okay. Go.
How many here would like to actually move a mountain with your faith? Brain power. Do you think it's actually possible? Do you think you have enough to do it? Do you know anyone else who does? Do you know anyone who ever has? Do you think I can? The question really isn't, do you have enough faith? The question is, are you willing to use it, right? Isn't that what we've been taught our whole lives? While we're on the subject, are we justified by faith or are we justified by works? You believe you know the answer, but are you sure? What is faith? How do we get it? Does it actually start off as something very small and eventually grow into something very big? If so, what makes it grow? And what verse of Bible do you base that on anyway? Does it grow in proportion to our ability to believe in something unseen? The name of this message is Mountain Moving Faithfulness. All right, so please stand and cover yourselves for the reading of our scripture today. For those of you who don't know, I'm tethered, cannot stand. It's not a command given by the Bible, it's a tradition that Yeshua and his Talmudim followed. That's for the uninitiated, Jesus and his disciples. They did this. Shaul, the guy they call Paul, he did this. All of his disciples, all of his followers did this as well. This is something that I think is a good thing to follow. Anyway, you don't have to. No one's going to look down on you if you don't. It's just something we do by tradition. So our verse comes from Habakkuk, which is known as Habakkuk to the Western world, chapter 2, verse 4. And it says it this way. Hine upala lo yashra nafshobo vet zedik be'emunato yeah, I don't know why I butchered that so bad. Let me try that again. It says Hine upala lo yashra nafsho bo vet zedik be'emunato yikye. All right, so you may be seated. All right, so our first word here, again, we are looking at Habakkuk or Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 4. Our first word is Hine. It means behold, lo. But Hine is used of putting someone's mind on something very specific. It's like pointing at something. Okay, so let me work it out there. So I'm pointing at the picture and saying, Hine, the picture. I want you to focus on the picture. I want you to quit looking at me and go look at the picture. That's what Hine really stands for. So it's not so much the behold as it is, I want you to behold something in particular. The next word is upala. Lifted up is the English for it. It's to swell up, to be swollen and inflated, to suffer from a tumor or a hernia because it's something that's swollen up, right? They use it of pride, of course, of pride, a heart, mind that's lifted up in pride. You get the idea. Then this is lo, which is not or no. It's the negative article. And then it says yashra. So behold, something that's lifted up is not yashra. It's not upright. It's not straight. It's especially of a way or a path, a way of life that is lifted up. Someone who's very high on themselves. That way of life is not a right way of life. It's not upright. It's not even. It's not level. Metaphorically, it's used of an even mind, of a tranquil mind, to be composed. So somebody who is very arrogant, somebody who says, I'll make America great again, I'll fix everything, I'll get rid of the stupid people, which he likes to say mostly, or the idiots, as he says occasionally, that are in the government, and I'll put right people in there because I'll make it great again. His mind is not tranquil. His mind is not composed. He is not on a straight path. He is not on a right path, right? You guys know who I'm talking about. I don't have to name names. But it's the opposite of, why would it say that? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, nothing, it doesn't make any sense at all. It's to be inflated. It's to be proud. It's to be puffed up. Now, here's a note I put in. The biblical Hebrews ascribe to a just man, a man who lives according to the laws contained within the Torah. It's of benignity, of liberality, someone who's generous, not someone who's liberal on the left. Someone who's generous. It's of temperance, of sobriety in eating and speaking, the love of truth and wisdom, emphatically used of innocence from Torah rebellion, which is, of course, called sin. Another note is the biblical text only refers to the Torah observant as righteous. All others are unrighteous. You guys catch that? In the Bible, it never refers to the righteous at any time if it's not speaking of someone who's Torah observant. Those who are not Torah observant were always called the unrighteous. Well, not always called, but they were always connected to unrighteousness, to non-Torah observance. And the ones who were called just, who were called righteous, those people were always, that was always spoken of Torah observant people. It would never have been connected to anyone else. Because in the Bible, you only had Torah observance or Torah rebellion. So you were either righteous, living according to the Torah, or you were unrighteous, living in rebellion of the Torah. That's the only thing you get in the Bible. Now, we inflect in the Western world other things into the Bible that are simply not there. These are your only choices. The next word is nafsho. So now we're going to know what the behold is. The thing that we're pointing at is a soul. So the person whose soul is lifted up is not righteous. Of course, the soul is what you think of. It's the part of you that lives on after your body dies. That's the soul, the real you. That's why you can say, you can never see God, or you can never see me. You can't see Robert Allen. All you can see is the flesh of Robert Allen. But when this flesh dies, Robert Allen will go on. And that part, that soul, you have never seen, right? God can see it, but we cannot see that kind of thing. All right, I'm going to move on past that. Then it says in him, so the soul in him that is lifted up is not right. It says be zadik, which is and just. So it's, I forget how this thing goes, but anyway, this next word is just. We've already had this word. It's the righteousness. It's used of well, we've had this idea of I don't remember what the word was previously. Was it from Zedek? Let's take a look real quick. Give me a second here. No, we had the upright, which is from Yarash. So it's something very similar, but not exactly the same thing. This is from Zedek. It's the idea of just and righteousness is used of a judge or a king. Again, you have to connect this to the Bible, because when they say that it's a king he maintains the right and dispenses justice, they are assuming that they mean justice according to the Torah. Not justice according to what somebody thinks justice is, but justice according to the Torah. It's very often used of God being a just God. Why? Because God judges according to the Torah. So those of you who say you live by grace and not the Torah, be careful with that. Be very careful with that, because you were judged by the Torah. You were under the Torah, even by New Testament standards. What is it? Romans chapter 7, verse 1. Every man, as long as he lives, is subject to the Torah. You're not going to get away from it no matter what flowery speech a preacher gives you. It isn't going to happen. You're under that law. You're judged by that law. That is the law by which you are judged, the law by which you will either get in or not get in, the law by which you are punished or not punished, and to the level by which you are punished when you are found guilty. It's all according to the Torah. And when they talk about a righteous judge, they're talking about a judge who is judging according to the Torah, not some judge who's judging according to, well, you're my friend, I'll let you get away with murder. You're not my friend, you mean nothing to me, I'm going to put you away for life for murder, right? That's not according to the Torah. The Torah doesn't allow that. So a just judge is someone who judges according to the Torah. It's of right and what's true according to the Torah. It's always going to be according to the Torah. The note here is that biblical Hebrews ascribe to a just man. They came up with the last one. Ascribes to a just man, a man who lives according to the Torah. If they call him just, that means he lives according to the Torah. If they call him a just judge, that means he judges according to the Torah. So we really have to get this down. It's from the root zadak, which is to be right or be straight, as of a straight way or path. So your way being right is a way that's according to the Torah. Any other way is wrong. Again, this is the Word of God. It's only going to base itself on the Word of God. It's not going to base itself on the laws in Europe or the laws in America or the laws in ancient Rome. It's going to base itself on the law of God. Okay, so it's to be true and sincere, to be right, suitable, again, according to the Torah. It's used of God. It's used of the Torah, of course, because it is just, it is righteous, it is holy. It's of someone who has a just cause, again, according to the Torah. It's to speak the truth of what is right amongst people who are disputing. Well, the only way you can do that is to base it on the Torah. All right, so then the next word, and this is the most important word we're going to come across today. It's be'emunato, which is literally it's in faithfulness he. So it's from emunah, obviously. The word is firmness, it's security, it's faithfulness. Emunah is faithfulness in fulfilling promises. It's from the root aman, which is properly to prop, to stay, to sustain, to support. Especially to support with the arm. To carry a child, one who carries and cares for a child. Also one who guards and brings up. To sustain, to nourish, to found, to build up. Hence, an architect, a workman, because they build. To be stayed up, hence to be firm, unshaken, such as someone may safely lean upon. Metaphorically, or should we say biblically, to be faithful is to lean and confide on anyone, to trust in someone or something, to be secure. Faithfulness was generally only spoken with respect to Torah observance. In other words, of being faithful to live out the Torah in our day-to-day lives. This word used in this way was no doubt chosen because the Yehudim, the Jews, believed that the Torah was the foundation of life. Literally, the word Torah means foundation. It's the explanation of the laws. It's the foundation that you build your house upon. It's the solid rock. It sustains and supports those who live according to it. So there's a couple of things that we need to see here. One, when they start talking about to prop, to stay, to sustain, to support, they're talking about the Torah. If you know the Torah, you can do what Yeshua did, what the Christians call Jesus. You can do what he did when you're attacked by the enemy. The enemy comes in and says, "Oh, jump off of this rock," and and the angels will grab you, and you'll be fine. And Yeshua quoted from the Torah. Bow down to me, and I'll give you everything. And Yeshua quoted from the Torah. And there was something else he said, and Yeshua quoted from the Torah. How can you think that you would do anything different than Yeshua? He gave you the example of what you're supposed to do. You can't quote from the Torah because if you don't know it, you have no foundation. Nothing to prop you up, nothing to sustain you, nothing to support you in the rough times, in the times of trial, if you don't have the Torah. It's a difficult thing to get through because you have no foundation. So you're to be propped up, to be sustained, to be supported can only be used of those who have Torah. Now, there's two phases to that. When you're new to it, you're propped up and you're sustained and you're supported by it like a baby in the arms. Somebody else is helping you get through this. Hopefully, it's a fully qualified rabbi and not some idios, as the Bible calls them. Yes, that's where we get idiot. They are called idios, not somebody just telling you that the holy smoke is filling his head full of knowledge and he knows the way. No, don't follow people like that. But those are the people that hold you like a baby. Now, as you learn it, you grow up. You won't grow up if you don't learn it. But if you learn it and you grow up, then it's like the more mature uh, husband and wife embracing. It's that type of relationship. So while having the relationship with God of you being the baby and being supported, that's a good thing. But trust me, it's better to have the more mature relationship, which will only come with the knowledge of God's law and the ability to live it out and the ability to just accept it and do it. Even if you're only living by three laws because your rabbi hasn't taught you any more than that, that's fine. We have got to get to the place in our life where we no longer have a problem with being told what to do because we're servants and servants are told what to do. And if you can't deal with someone telling you what to do, whether it's your boss, your spouse, your employer, you're not so much your employer, your customer, whatever, if you can't deal with that, you're kidding yourself to think you're okay with God telling you what to do. You're just kidding yourself. Because if you can't do the small stuff, you sure can't do the big stuff. So we have to get past that. That's part of the growing up process. Getting to a place where we're okay with why do we do it? Because God said so. It took me a lifetime to get that way. I wasn't that way. You had to explain to me why there was a good reason for me to do it. Why should I have to wear a long beard? Why should I have to wear a fringe? You tell me why, and maybe I'll do it. Why should I have to give up my pork? Well, when I found out it was killing people, I was like, okay, I gave up pork, right? That was easy. But some of this other stuff, when there's no reasoning for it other than God said it, I had a problem with that. At this point, I don't care. If God said it, that's cool with me. I'm along for the ride. I'll do whatever God says. That shows maturity. That shows that you're growing up. It shows that you're ready to hit the world running. And that's a good place to be. That's a mature place to be. And this is what faithfulness is. Because when we know that we know, when we're leaning on and supported by the Torah, we have a solid foundation. And when we're living by the Torah because we want to, not because we have to, not because our spouse is doing it and we're just being drug along for the ride, it's got to be in here. When we get to that place, we're starting to grow up. We're starting to have a mature relationship with God, and it will affect our ability to have a right relationship with our spouse. It really will. It's a good thing. All right, so the next word is yikyeh, which is live. The original idea of this word is that of breathing, in as much as the life of animate beings is discerned by their breathing. If you're not breathing, you're not alive. Yeah, that's all they're really saying. All right, so here's the Amplified Translation. I know you've already forgotten. It's Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. And this will be out there, but listen close. Behold, a lifted up, swollen, and inflated soul is not upright, straight, even, level, tranquil, composed, Torah observant, wise, sin-free, or righteous. A soul like that is none of the above when it's in a person. But the just, who are, of course, righteous, true, Torah observant, honest, virtuous, pious, temperate, sober, wise, sin-free, right, straight, true, sincere person. That person, the Torah observant, that's what that means, is alive, lives out his or her life in firmness. This is emunah, in firmness and security, sustained, supported, nourished, unshaken, and founded by faithfulness in Torah observance. And let me go on to say, if you're just doing that with the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 laws that you know, you're already well on your path. Your mind is beginning to settle. All of the other stuff that drug you down is beginning, the chains are beginning to fall off. Just with a little bit. Can you imagine what it'll be when you get to the whole thing? Or what a day that'll be. All right, so here's the more straightforward, easier to understand translation. Behold, a lifted up soul is not Torah observant. It's not just in a person. But the Torah observant, the righteous, they live out their lives by Torah observance. They live it out by faithfulness. Not faith, faithfulness. Torah observance. You're observing the law faithfully. That's Torah observance. That's what we're talking about. All right. Let's shift gears and look at a few verses from the Sepharim Shelihim. Now, I am not going to give you my exact translation on a lot of these things because it won't fit. I'm going to go with kind of a revised King James-ish version. This first one is actually my translation of Yaakov, which is James, chapter 2. We're going to look at verses 21 through 24. And he begins by saying, wasn't our father Abraham? So he's a Jew talking to Jews. Wasn't our father Abraham justified by ma'asim of Torah? Wasn't he justified by works when he offered his son Yitzhak, you probably know him as Isaac, on the altar? Wasn't he? The answer is yes. Yes, yes, he was. He was justified by works. Well, yeah, that's the old way. We got a new way, and that's a Jew. We're Gentiles. We do it different. No, think about it. This is the book the Gentiles claim for themselves. This is supposed to be applying to them. All right, verse 22. You see, he said, Torah observance. You see Torah observance or faithfulness together with his ma'asim of Torah. So you see this faithfulness, this Torah observance, mixed in with his deeds of the Torah, his works. You see that in the story. You should be able to see that, he's saying. And from those works, Torah observance is completed. It's a little hard to understand, but Yaakov is telling us that the one doesn't exist without the other. If you're still trying to insert the word belief in place of faithfulness, which you probably are because it's what everybody in the West is taught, well, it works the same way in this instance. If we truly believe, we will do the works of Torah. However, if we say we believe, but we refuse to do the works of the Torah, we don't actually believe. Put another way, we can't say we believe unless and until we do the works of Torah, which is the subject of this whole chapter. We are all talk and no walk, no matter how many functions we attend, no matter how many classes we teach, no matter how much money we give. The Torah commands us to give so much more than the physical needs of our brothers and sisters. And Yaakov has already told us that we cannot throw out that which we dislike and keep that which we do like. Verse 23. And should be ketuvim. I wrote Tanahit. I realized this morning that that's not period correct, so I'm going to change it to ketuvim at some point. And the ketuvim, the writings, were fulfilled, which said, and Abraham was Torah observant, he was faithful to Yahweh, and he, speaking of Yahweh, counted it to him, to Abraham, as Torah observance, as righteousness. Of course, that's from Genesis 15:6. Then it goes on and it says, and he was called God's lover. Now, you're not going to see that in most translations because once the Puritans got a hold of it and they were so uptight about everything, nobody could understand what was being talked about. Of course, in that last statement, they're talking about the verse that says, and Yahweh spoke to Moshe face to face as a man to his lover. And he returned to the camp, and his minister, Yehoshua, the son of Nun, a young man, did not depart from the midst of the tent. So, of course, it's Exodus 33:11. So what you need to understand from that is in their world, when you became betrothed to a woman, she put a veil over her face. Restriction of access. Hands off. Do not touch. You're not going to have conversation even with this girl, right? But when you marry, she pulls the veil off. She doesn't wear the veil anymore because the access is no longer denied. And so when they talk about men, you know, God being a lover of a man, it's not that he loves that man. Well, sure he does, but he loves everybody, right? What they're talking about is there's no restriction of access. Think about it in the story. When Moshe came out and spoke to the people, he wore the veil. Restriction of access. Because it freaked everybody out because his face glowed. Nobody's used to seeing a man with a glowy face, right? But when he went into the presence of God, what did he do? He took the veil off. So God spoke to Moshe like a man to his lover. That's what they mean by that. In other words, anything that Moshe wanted to know, he asked God, God answered. It's to the degree that Moshe could understand it, obviously, because there were some things he couldn't understand, and God told him that. Basically, in one place, God tells him, in essence, that his brain will melt out of his ears. He tells him because it's too much for a human mind. So we have to understand that it's only to the degree that a human can understand it. But there's no rules other than that. If you want to know, you just ask and God will answer. What a place to be, right? And that's the example that God gave us in His Word of the relationship that He wants with us. And He went through an awful lot to give us the ability to have that. He died on a cross. But more importantly, He raised Himself from the dead. And by doing that, He gives us the right to have that relationship. But the only way we're going to have that relationship is to become Torah observant, to become righteous, to live faithfully according to the law. And it's not that you live faithfully to all of the laws in the book, it's that you live faithful to all of the laws that you've been taught, and that you're faithful to keep going back every single Shabbat to learn more. As long as you live that way, you are well on that path. So what little you do know, do it to the best of your ability. If you know to do it, do it. If you know to do it and you don't, what is it? It's Torah rebellion. Anyway, that should sound familiar to some of you. So going on to verse 24, you see that by ma'asim of Torah, by the works, a man is justified. Yeah, verse 24 says that. By works, man is justified. But it says, and not by Torah observance only. Are you starting to catch it? I hope so. By works he's justified, but not by works only. It's got to have faithfulness with it. In other words, see then, here's maybe a better way to understand that verse. See then how that not by works alone is a man justified, but also by equal portions of works and faithfulness. Works and faithfulness. You have to be faithful in your carrying out of the works. Well, if you're doing the works, you're faithful, right? No. Let's say you learn to wear the fringe and you begin to wear the fringe, and then when it's inconvenient, you're not wearing the fringe, and then you feel guilty I bring it up, you feel guilty and you wear it again, then when it becomes inconvenient, you're not being faithful, right? In faithfulness, we're talking about you know to do it and you always do it. That's where we have to get. So it's better that I go slow and teach you a few things and get you good at that and work our way into the next one and the next one and the next one. At least that's what I believe. And believe me, it's all on me. If I'm wrong about this, you're not going to be in trouble with God. God is a just God. He's not going to blame you for my shortcomings. Anyway, why was I saying faithfulness instead of faith? Because everybody translates it faith, right? Well, how many times does the word faith show up in the Hebrew Bible, in the Tanakh, in the part of the book that the Christians call the Old Testament? How many times do you think that shows up? Well, in the King James Version, He shows up 2 times. 2. And they're both mistakes. It should never have been in there because it isn't in the Hebrew Bible. It's not in the Old Testament. In other words, well, I really kind of said what I was going to say there. So how many times do you think faith shows up in the New Testament letters? Well, in the King James, 245 times. That should send red flags up. That should make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There is nothing new in the New Testament. It should never have been called the New Testament. I understand why they called it the New Covenant, but boy, when it became the New Testament, ooh, did we get ourselves in some trouble. The New Testament, as it's called by Christians, is a compilation of letters written to explain some point of doctrine from the Tanakh, from the Hebrew Bible, from the part of the book that Christians call the Old Testament. There wasn't any other place to get doctrine at that time in history. The New Testament didn't yet exist. Think about it. So should there be a doctrine in the letters of the apostles that doesn't exist in the what we call the Old Testament, what Christians call it the Old Testament? Everyone is going to say yes. Yeah, because why? Because Christians are taught from the very beginning that Jesus came to do something new, even though he never did that. Because God never changes. There will be nothing new. The Bible says there'll be nothing new. It's in Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new under the sun. But all of a sudden, here comes Christianity, and we have something new, and everybody buys it. No. Should there be a doctrine in the New Testament, as it's called, that's not in the Old Testament, as it's called? No. The answer is no. No, no, no. Galatians chapter 1, verse 9, basically it says, and I said before and now say again, if anyone preaches contrary to that which we have received, it is cursed. Again, there was no such thing as a New Testament during the first century. These people didn't have a New Testament to teach these people. They didn't come teach these people something new. The gospel is preached exclusively from the Tanakh, from the part of the book that Christians call the Old Testament. Everything they taught came from that book. It was the only one they had. All right. And Shaul, the one they call Paul, he just said that any message contrary to that which you find in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, as the Christians call it, is not just false, it's cursed. The word faith does not belong in the letters of the apostles. It is a mistake made by translators 1,700 years after the letters were first written by the apostles. That's how long it took for them to make that mistake. Mark 11:21 through 23 pretty much says, and I'm going by the English King Jamesy thing here, and Peter, calling to remembrance, said to him, to Yeshua, Master, and master's the right word here, behold, the fig tree which you cursed is withered away. He's surprised. Yeshua, Jesus as the Christians know him, he curses a tree, and Kepha, Peter as they call him, is surprised that it withers away. And Yeshua, that's the guy they call Jesus, answering said to them, have faith in God. Have faith in God. Doesn't this seem odd? He curses a tree, the tree withers away. Kepha, Peter points it out, and Yeshua says, have faith in God. Remember, we know that faith is not right. So what's he saying? He's saying, be faithful to God. It seems odd, right? But truly I say to you that whoever shall say to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he said will come to pass, he shall have whatever he said. So here we have Cinderella. There's 2 key words, though, in this passage. Doubt in Greek is mediocrite. Mediocrite. Do you hear mediocrity? Mediocrite? Yeah. Septuagint for it was they use that word in the Septuagint in place of the Hebrew word shaphat, which is to be set up of judgment a final decision, unchangeable. It's to absolutely have your mind made up. So that's not to doubt, it's to have your mind made up. But more importantly, it's not to change your mind. Don't stop it. If you decide to go build a house, don't put the foundation down and the walls up and then stop. Probably going to need a roof, probably going to need to dry it in. I'm just saying. So faith and belief are both the same word in the New Testament. That comes from the root pistis in Greek. It's always used in the Septuagint. They use that some form of pistis in place of the Hebrew word emunah. That's the faithful word, right? The propped up, the stay, the supported, that kind of thing, the foundation. So here's how it should have been translated. Mark 11:21-23. And remembering, Caiaphas said to him, speaking of Yeshua, Rabbi, my master. Rabbi means my master. Behold, the fig tree which you cursed is dried up. And Yeshua responded and said to them, be Torah observant to God. Be faithful. Be Torah observant. It's exactly the same thing. Amen, I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, move and be thrown into the sea, and does not turn away, he doesn't doubt, he doesn't stop in his heart, it will come to pass because he is steadfast, because he's faithful, in this case steadfast, to what he said. In other words, you can't stop doing what you started doing. Now that you know the word should have been faithful, change it in your mind every time you read it. This will sometimes be hard for you to do, but should work most of the time for you. So what I'm saying is, if you have an English translation of the Bible, every time you see the word faith, mark it out and write faithful. Sometimes it'll make sense immediately. Sometimes you're going to have to think this through. Let me give you some examples. Matthew 6:30 basically says, wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O you of little faithfulness? Because it says, O you of little faith, right? So, O you of little faithfulness. Oh, what's that mean? Well, this is a Hebrew way of saying you haven't studied the scriptures faithfully, or you would know better. Matthew 8:26. And he said to them, why are you fearful, O you of little faithfulness? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So this is a Hebrew way of saying you haven't been faithful in getting to know me. If they had been faithful and they're getting to know him and getting to know the Torah, they would have known they had nothing to fear. Matthew 14:31. And immediately Yeshua stretched forth his hand and caught him. Because this is capable of falling in the water. He stepped out on the water, and then he it's not that he looked at the storm. He was already seeing the storm. He's on the water. He's looking around. It's not like it's because what Christians teach. Oh, he looked around, saw the storm, got scared, fell in. No. What did he do? He stopped walking. So Yeshua stretches out his arm and grabs a hold of him so as not to let him sink into the water and drown. And Yeshua said to him, O you of little faithfulness, why did you doubt? This is a Hebrew way of saying, Kappa, why didn't you just keep walking? Because that was the command, come. And the second he stopped doing what he was told to do, he sunk. But the beauty of it is, because you're like, oh, that's what God does. The second I start doing it, I just mess up a little bit, I start sinking in the water. Yeah, but what did God do? He grabbed him by the hand and didn't let him. That's the thing you got to realize is you think you're going to drown, but God has your hand. He grabbed a hold of you. Don't worry about it. Let me throw this at you. A new airport was proposed in the 1960s near Kobe in Osaka, Japan. After much protest, it was decided that the airport would be built offshore. So a 4 by 1 kilometer island was proposed. The airport and island had to withstand earthquakes, typhoons, and storm surges of up to 3 meters. Construction began in 1997 on the seawall, which was finished in 1989. It took 48,000 concrete blocks. 3 mountains, not one or two, but three, were moved, creating some 21 million cubic meters of landfill. It took 10,000 workers, 10 million work hours, and over 3 years, utilizing 80 ships. And in 1990, a 3-kilometer bridge was completed to connect the island to the mainland for the low, low price of $1 billion. And believe me, that was a low price. It was believed that the island would gradually sink under the weight of the material, but it sunk 8 meters by the time of completion, which was much more than expected. The project took some 20 years of planning, 3 years of construction, and billions of dollars, making it the most expensive civil works project in modern history. Because when you add up the price of the 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 bridge to connect it, the island itself, the materials, then you get into billions, not just the 1 billion. Construction of the terminal began in 1991. Adjustable columns under the airport were designed and installed to offset the sinking. So they raise the poles up, they stick another steel plate under them every time it's needed to lift it up. The columns are raised with hydraulic lifts and then thick metal plates inserted. The airport opened in 1994. So did you hear that? Someone actually moved not one, but 3 mountains and cast them into the sea. They did exactly what Yeshua said they could do. Matthew 17:20 says, and Yeshua said to them, because of your unbelief, for verily I say to you, if you have faithfulness as a grain of a mustard seed, you should say to this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. So you put a seed that is so small it can barely be seen into the ground and water it and take care of it, and for the next 10 years, that seed will lay there and say, I think I can, I think I can. Or maybe because that seed has so much faith, it'll say, I know I can, I know I. Maybe not. That's not what happens, is it? The seed simply grows. The seed is just being faithful. It just grows day after day after day after day. At some point, that small seed will grow into a 10-foot tall plant that looks more like a tree with a humongous trunk. How did it happen? By that seed believing that it could do it? No. It just did what it was designed to do. It just grew. It's not about what the seed believes. The seed can't believe. It doesn't even have a brain. It wasn't about its ability to believe that it could grow. It's all about what the seed does. James 2:20 says, but you should know, O vain man, that, let's say, faithfulness without works is dead. It's a moot point. That's literally the word they use. Moot. That's a Hebrew word. It means dead. So it's a dead issue. It's a dead point. You can't have faithfulness without works. Because without the works, there's nothing to be faithful to. There's no way to be faithful. Right? If I'm going to dig a ditch, I'm actually going to have to dig a ditch. If I don't dig the ditch, without my digging, my work is dead. It's a dead point. There will be no ditch, right? Or if I dig 3 scoops and don't keep going, I just have 3 scoops of dirt moved. No ditch. It's a dead issue. If the seed doesn't grow each day, it will never become a huge plant. If we're going to move mountains, we're going to have to pick up a shovel and use it until the mountain is gone. So what James 2:20 should have said, of course, I've already said it, that, O vain man, that faithfulness without works is dead. Why? Because if we don't do anything, nothing gets done. It's that simple. If we start something but don't finish it, it is not complete. To move a mountain was a Hebrew idiom that meant to do something stupendous, to accomplish a most awesome thing. I think I got that from the Strong's Concordance, just looking to see what they said. So, can we apply these verses to the mountains in our lives? Yes. But we don't stand around and wait until we have enough belief in something to get it accomplished. We must do something to have accomplishments in our life. If we wait until our faith is strong enough for us to move a mountain, that mountain's going to be there for the rest of our life. Until we pick up a shovel and start moving that mountain, it will never get moved. We can believe that we will not grow older until the cows come home. But guess what? We're going to be a day older tomorrow, no matter what we believe. Am I right? We cannot change anything in our lives or conquer any mountain in our lives with spiritual brain power. It doesn't exist. That is to say, we cannot just believe a mountain will jump out of the Colorado Rockies and land in the Pacific Ocean. What we can do is get some earth movers and dynamite and start digging. How do we move mountains in our lives? We do it one scoop at a time. If you believe that your flat tire will be fixed, but you don't get out and change it, or have somebody change it, your faithfulness without works is dead. It's one of those duh things, right? If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. If no one does it, it won't get done. Duh. Faithfulness without works is dead. Why? Because without works, there is no faithfulness. We do not think, therefore we are. We do not believe, therefore it happens. Faithfulness is only a piece taken from the whole. If we just do works, we're not there yet. We must be faithful to do the works, or no works will ever be accomplished. I've already given you a fairly good example with the ZZ. Wear it, don't wear it. Wear it, don't wear it. Wear it, don't wear it. We're not faithful. We're doing the works occasionally, but we're not faithful. Do you see? It's not. This isn't legalism. Is feeding the hungry legalism? Is clothing the naked legalism? Is helping friends change a flat tire legalism? Or a total stranger? Is that legalism? For that matter, is helping a person get an ox out of a ditch really legalism? Get real. What are we thinking? If we do works to be seen, we have our reward. That's all we get. If we do works to gain salvation, we are completely deceived, because it will not save us. But if we do no works, we're not faithful either. Because faithfulness without works simply doesn't exist. Make up your mind what you want. If you want people to call you a doctor, call you Dr. Allen, or, well, in your case, that wouldn't be what you wanted to be called. But you know what I'm saying. You'll have to be faithful to do the work required to get a doctorate degree, right? If you want to be a rock star, you'll have to be faithful to do the work required for success. And you're going to need a whole lot of luck. If you want to be a good parent, you'll have to do the work required to accomplish that goal. If you don't parent your child, you're not going to be a good parent. If you want to be an author, you must be faithful to write the words. If you don't finish the book, you'll never be an author. If you want to be a piano player, you must be faithful to practice. And you have to have perfect practice. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. If I practice doing something wrong over and over again, I will do it wrong from now on. It will not make perfect. If I practice it properly, then my practice makes it perfect. Just saying. You can have what you want if you are willing to pay the price. What is the price? Faithfulness on the one hand, and on the other hand, an unchanged mind. We cannot be faithful to anything if our heart wavers. If we don't keep doing it, we're not faithful. Decide what you want. Be faithful to do what it takes. Don't change your mind, and you will move the mountains in your life. Shalom, be shalom.